Loki walked into a hall full of gods who wanted him gone, and took an empty seat like he owned the place. Then he went down the table and told every one of them the ugliest true thing he knew about them. It was the last free night he would ever have. What the gods did next, they built to outlast the world itself. Understand the punishment. You have to understand what Loki had already done. This was not the gods losing their temper over a few insults at a party. Loki lived in Asgard, at Odin's own table, and he was not born a god at all. Giant blood ran in him. Odin took him in anyway, opened his own arm, mixed their two bloods, and called him brother. That word matters. Hold on to it. For years, Loki earned his seat. When the gods needed a wall built for almost nothing, he found the way. When Thor's hammer was stolen, Loki got it back. He was the quickest mind in the hall, and he knew it. And that was the crack running right through him. Someone in this hall has to actually think. The rest of you swing hammers and shout across the table. Every mess you have ever crawled out of, look closely, and you will find my fingerprints on the door you left by. You are welcome, as always. That was the trouble. He could never leave it there. One clever word, then one more, then the single word too many that turned a warm room cold. He had to win the last exchange, every time. It was almost a sickness in him. And he had a family that most people forget he ever had. A wife, Sigyn, quiet, steady, the one soul in 9 worlds who never once asked him to be anything other than what he was. And 2 young sons, Vali and Narvi. Remember those 3. The wife who stayed, and the 2 boys. Everything the gods are about to do comes back to them. 'Cause somewhere across the years, the cleverness soured into something colder. Loki stopped solving the gods' problems and started being the problem. Broke open over Baldr, the brightest, best-loved god in all of Asgard. His mother had gone across the whole world and made every living thing swear an oath never to harm him. She missed one, a sprig of mistletoe, young and small, too new to be asked for any promise. And it was Loki who noticed, Loki who cut it, Loki who pressed it into a blind god's hand and gently told him where to aim. Baldr fell. The light of Asgard went out on an ordinary afternoon, and the fingerprints on it were Loki's. Then the gods begged the land of the dead to give Baldr back on one condition, that everything in the world weep for him. Everything did. Every stone, every animal, every god, all of them in tears, all but one old giantess in a cave who sat there dry-eyed and bored and would not cry. And everyone knew, everyone, exactly who was really sitting behind that giantess's face. So Baldr stayed among the dead, over a single tear that Loki would not give. That is the man the gods finally ran out of patience with. Not a prankster. Someone who took the thing they loved most, on purpose, and then strolled into dinner to enjoy their faces. The sea giant Aegir laid on a feast, and every god worth the name came down to it. Gold light on the walls, ale that poured itself, one whole night of peace. Loki was not on the guest list, and every soul there knew exactly why. He came anyway, stood in the doorway until the whole hall went silent, and asked very politely for a seat and a cup. They turned him out. He walked straight back in, and this time he had stopped asking for anything at all. Sit, all of you, sit down. You have whispered about me across this table for years, so tonight we will do it properly, out loud. I will go one at a time. There is not a single face in this room I do not know something true and ugly about. Shall I begin? And he did. He went down the hall like a man reading names off a list. This goddess, and whose bed she had actually been in. That great hero, and the fight he ran from, while the songs still call him brave. Old vows, quietly broken. Children no one was supposed to mention. Every word bit, because every word was true. That was the poison in it. You cannot shout down a man who is only saying out loud the thing you already did in the dark. You, All-Father, do not sit up there so grand. I remember an oath. I remember 2 arms opened and a promise of brotherhood. Where is that promise tonight? You will drink with the worst of them at this table, but not with me. Then he turned to Baldr's mother, still raw with her grief, and he said the one thing not even his worst enemy believed he would dare. Weeping still, save it. If you truly want to know whose hand put out your bright boy, dear lady, you are looking straight at him, and I would do it again before breakfast. That was the line, right there. Not the insults, not the secrets. That. He looked a grieving mother in the eye, named himself, and smiled. And the room stopped being angry and became something worse. It went quiet. Here is what none of them could see yet. This was Loki, spending the last free hour he owned, and buying nothing at all with it. No plan, no way out, just the thin, cold pleasure of watching gods squirm. And then the doors blew open, and they felt it before they saw it. The floor was trembling. Thor was home from the road, and Thor had never once in his life answered a clever word with another clever word. You are finished talking. One more sound. One. And you leave this hall in pieces small enough to fit in the cup you came begging for. There he is. The only real argument any of you ever had. Fine, Thunderer. I will go. Not because you are right, because you are the one man here who swings before he thinks. And even I would like to keep my head on my neck a little longer. So Loki strolled out under his own power, grinning, the last word firmly between his teeth. He honestly believed the most dangerous thing in that hall was Thor's temper. He had just set a clock ticking on the rest of his life, and he could not hear it. But Loki knew what was coming. He always knew. So he ran to the loneliest edge of the world and built himself a house. Strange house. 4 doors, one in each wall, so that whichever way trouble came from, he would see it early and be gone out the far side before it ever arrived. By day, he stopped being Loki at all. He would go down to the waterfall below the house, pour himself into the shape of a salmon, and hang in the cold white rush where no hand in the world could keep hold of him. God, who could wear any shape there was, hiding as a fish in a river. It should have been perfect. For almost anyone else, it would have been. See, that restless mind of his would not switch off, even in hiding. One evening by his own fire, he took up flax and twine, and out of pure idle habit he knotted together a thing the world had never seen before, a net. The first fishing net ever made. He sat there admiring it, proud, because of course he was. Then he glanced up, and through one of his 4 clever doors he saw them, coming down the hillside, the gods, already close, far too close. So he threw his brand new net onto the fire, watched the flames eat it, and bolted for the river. He had forgotten who was in that hunting party. Among the gods walked Kvasir, the wisest being ever made, put together from the wisdom of the gods themselves. Kvasir crouched down at the cold, smoking hearth. He looked at the black shape the burning had pressed into the ashes, and he understood it in a single breath. It was a tool. A tool built for one purpose, to catch the thing that lives in water, and every god in that house understood, all at once, what was hiding in the river below them. So the gods sat down at Loki's own hearth and rebuilt his invention out of its own ashes. They tied the first net a second time, for one reason only, to haul its maker up out of the deep. That is the trap Loki never once saw coming. Not a sword, not a chain. His own cleverness lifted off the floor and turned around to point straight back at him. They came to the river, with the net stretched wide between them, and they began to drag it downstream. Loki flattened himself against the stones on the riverbed and let the whole thing pass over his back, once. But the gods felt something big graze the ropes, and now they knew for certain he was in there. They hung weights along the bottom edge and dragged again, lower, scraping the very floor of the river. This time there was no gap underneath to press into. 2 choices were left him, and only 2. Downstream and out to the open sea, or up and over. Loki had reached that sea before. He knew, he was sure of it, that he could make it again. This was the moment the whole thing still hung in the balance. He chose up. He gathered every scrap of strength in that salmon body and hurled himself out of the water, clean over the top of the net, a bright arc of silver in the evening air, aimed for the deep, safe pool on the far side. And he almost had it. He was over the ropes. He was falling toward open water and freedom, the way he had fallen out of every trap ever set for him. Thor had waded out into the middle of the river, and Thor was waiting for exactly this. The thunder god's hand closed on the leaping salmon in midair, right at the narrow before the tail, and the harder the fish fought, the harder that fist bore down and held. That, the old folk swore ever after, is why the salmon has that thin pinched tail to this day. It is the print of the god of thunder's grip, still holding on. Loki twisted back into his own shape inside that fist, a god again, caught at last, and by the one god he could never talk his way around. No fourth door to slip through, no new shape left to pour himself into, no clever word Thor was willing to stand there and listen to. After a whole lifetime of being the one who always got away, Loki had been caught by two bare hands in a cold river, and the getting away was over for good. They took him deep under the mountains, into a cave far from the sun, where no clever word of his could reach a single ear that might be moved by it. The gods, who had spent this entire story being far too gentle with Loki, decided that the gentleness was over. We took you in. I opened my own arm and called you brother, and you repaid me with my son, and then you sat at my table and told me you would gladly do it again. You are done speaking now, Loki. You have said more than enough for one lifetime. We are going to make certain you never say anything that matters again. They did not reach for chains. Chains Loki could argue with, or slip, or shatter. They wanted a thing he could never once talk his way out of. So they went and brought in his two sons, Lee and Narvi. The boys from the quiet start of all this. They led them down into the dark, in front of their bound and helpless father. Then the gods did the single cruelest thing in all of Norse myth. They took Loki's own son Vali, and they twisted him into a wolf. Not a boy wearing a wolf shape, a true wolf, wild and starving, and with nothing of the sun left inside to hold it back. In front of Loki, the thing that had been one of his sons fell upon the other, and Loki, who had a clever answer for absolutely everything, was made to watch, and had not one word for any of it. When the dark went still, only Narvi was left, and he was not moving, and the gods bent down and gathered up what remained of him, because they were not finished using Loki's children against him. They drew out the boy's own body into long, hard cords. His son became the rope, and with the rope that had been his child, they tied Loki down. 3 slabs of standing stone. They laid him back across them, one under his shoulders, one under his hips, one beneath the backs of his knees. The instant the cords were knotted tight, they turned to cold iron and grew down into the rock itself. There would be no slipping out of this one. The trickster, who could be a salmon, a fly, a mare, an old woman, anything at all, would keep exactly one shape from now on, his own, held wide open in the dark by the last of his own son. Still, they were not done. A tall giantess stepped forward out of the shadows, Skadi. She had carried a grudge against Loki for years, and she had brought a guest down into that cave with her, a long, dark serpent. You so love to drip your poison into every ear in the north. A little word here, a little wound there. Let us see how you like it flowing the other way, trickster. 1 drop at a time. She fastened the serpent to the rock directly above his face, so that its venom would fall, slow and patient and endless, straight down onto him. And there, staring up at the thing that would scald him, a drop at a time. Until the end of days, Loki finally ran clean out of clever things to say. This was the second. It all reached him at once. Every word had felt free when he threw it. He had spent them like they cost nothing. And here in the dark, the whole bill had come, due in a single stroke, written out in the bodies of his own children. And then someone came down into that cave who did not have to come at all. Sigyn, his wife. In one single night, she had lost both of her sons. One of them made into the weapon, the other made into the rope. She had every reason the world could offer to turn around and leave him to the dark. Instead, she sat down beside him. She found a bowl, just a plain wooden bowl, and she lifted it up over her husband's face to catch the venom before it could reach his skin. And that, from then on, was her whole life. Sitting on cold stone in the black, holding up a bowl, catching poison one slow drop at a time, so that it would never touch the man she loved. I know what you are. I always knew what you were. I am not here because you were ever good to anyone. I am here because you were mine. Now lie still. I have got it. I have got it for as long as my arms will hold. But a bowl only holds so much. Every so often it fills right up to the brim, and she has no choice but to lift it away and empty it out. And in all the 9 worlds, there is no one to take her place while she does. So in those few seconds, with the bowl gone, the venom falls where it was always going to fall, onto Loki's upturned face, and it burns like nothing that exists in the living world. He convulses. The god who never once flinched at anything throws himself against that iron so hard that the whole earth heaves with him. Mountains shudder. The ground splits. Far, far above, people feel the land itself lurch, and they have no word yet for what it is. That, the old story tells us, is what an earthquake really is. It is Loki, still down there, still writhing. In the half a second it takes his wife to turn away and pour out the bowl. Then she turns back. She raises the bowl again. The drops go quiet, and the two of them settle back into the only life left to either of them. Her holding, him waiting. Clock keeps counting down, quiet drop by quiet drop, toward the end of the world. It is worth stopping, for a moment, on what is really holding Loki down there. It is not Thor's strength. Thor could catch him, but Thor could never have held him. It is not the iron, or the stone, or any wall the gods knew how to build. What actually pins the trickster to that rock is the one thing he could never talk his way around. Things he did to the people who trusted him. He spent a whole life proving that words were cheap, that promises were for fools, that he could betray anyone at all and still slip out the side door, laughing. And in the end, he is tied down by a rope made from his own child, under the watch of the one person he never once thought to betray. The man who broke every promise he ever made is kept alive, drop, by someone quietly keeping hers. But the gods should not rest easy on it, because that bowl runs out, that patience runs out. Loki is not down there forever. He is only down there until the morning the sun goes black, and every chain in the world snaps at once. When Ragnarok comes, Loki gets up off that rock, and he is not coming back to talk. Gods believed they had finally ended him. What they had actually done was hand the end of the world a reason to hate them, and a very long time in the dark to sharpen it. So that is the punishment the gods built to outlast the world itself. A god on his back in the dark, his own son for a rope, a serpent for a clock, and one faithful wife with a wooden bowl, holding back the poison for as long as her arms will last. Which leaves the hard little question this old story sets down on the table and just walks away from. The Loki earned every single drop that falls on him, and Sigyn is down there catching it for him anyway. So, is that the truest love in all of Norse myth? Or is it the last and cruelest thing the gods left him with, made to watch someone good pour her whole life away on someone who deserved none of it? Tell me where you land down in the comments. I read them. 'Cause when Ragnarok does come and Loki finally rises, the very first fight he goes looking for is with the god who watched the gates the longest. And that one is a story all of its own. There is a new forgotten myth here every week. Subscribe and stay for the gods the history books left out in the dark. The forgotten Pantheon is only beginning.